Video portion will be looking at connections. So we're going to start this session up. I already have a session here that is a 19 channel, and we'll get into the how to get here in a different video. But what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and start this session, and what we're going to be looking for is to see how good of a signal we have coming from each area or each electrode. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and hit go. When you hit go, this is the first message that you'll get. And when you hit OK, it's going to start running the EEG. And you're going to have the second message here. You do not want to hit OK yet. You want to verify that you have good connections. So we're going to just it's going to run the EEG. It's not going to actually start the session. When you hit OK the second time, it actually starts your session. If you do hit OK and it starts the session, it is OK. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. Simply hit your space bar on the computer, and you can see your message up here that it has now paused. So your session is paused. Everything is okay. Now what we want to do is we want to come over here and we want to look on the left-hand side of the screen. Over here is where you see all of your sites, starting at FP1, and it goes all the way down, all 19 areas. So the first thing you want to do is you want to verify that you have numbers, regardless of what they are, that you have connections. You can see here the EEG is running across the screen, and so you have a live active session. The second thing you want to do is you want to come over in this left hand side. We have these numbers underneath your sites. This one says 4.0, and this is K ohms. Ohms is measuring the resistance of signal running through the wire. So you want to have the least amount of resistance, which means you're getting the best flow of signal from the brain to the amplifier, which right here, we're gonna go ahead and take a look. And this is important to know because you will have clients asking you questions because they don't know. So what you're looking for, and this is directly related to your impedances, is each hole that is filled with gel in this cap is actually sending what we call a signal, or EEG, from the cap through the wires to the amplifier. And the amplifier, which I cannot get into the specifics of how the mathematical equations work, through the amplifier into the computer. And this is what a direct result of what you're seeing coming from the cap. And it's showing us on the screen. There is nothing going from the computer. There's nothing going from the amplifier through the wires back to the brain. It is, it's direct. There's no loop. So what you want to do is you want to look over here, and you're looking at these numbers. You see 4.2, you see 6.0, and on down the line, you see these numbers. And then all of a sudden you see this. Now this one stands out because obviously it's red and it's a higher number. The higher number that you see means the more resistance that you're getting of the signal flowing from the cap to the computer. With Brainmaster, they color code the different numbers for impedances. So anything above the number 15, anything above 15 k ohms, it's going to show red. Anything below between 15 and 10, which we don't have any on here, is going to be yellow. Anything from 10 to 5 is going to be green. And anything under 5 is going to be white. So the lower the number, the better the connection, the better the signal. This red here, you want, the general rule of thumb is you would like for all of your impedances to be under 5 and below, which means a lot of them will be white. Well, all of them will be white. The green from 5 to 10 is acceptable. The yellow, which we don't see on here, you would like to get the yellow down to under 10, so you have all green. And the red, you want to resolve. You don't want to have any red for your impedances. So what we're going to do is we're going to identify the spot, the area where the signal is being impeded. So we look and we see it is at F8. So what we're going to do is there's a couple of ways that we can resolve this issue. We have right here, Q-tip. I talked about this in the other video, and this is one of the things that we can use to move around some hair depending on the area that we're at. If that doesn't work, we can insert a little more gel into the cap as well. So let's go ahead and find F8. F8 is going to be right here. It is on the right temporal lobe, frontal temporal lobe. So what we want to do is we want to try the Q-tip first. Actually, there's something we can do before that. Go ahead and just take the electrode. You can lift it up a little bit and just rock it a little bit back and forth like this. Give it a little bit of a kind of a rocking back and forth. And then sometimes we'll do a little shake up and down like that. And then we'll take a look over here and see how we did. Okay. So we went from red to yellow, but we want to resolve the yellow to have green. So what we'll do is we'll come back over to that F8 and we will take the non-cotton side of the Q-tip and we'll just put it in the hole here and just lightly, you can feel when you're at the skull and you just want to kind of just move it around, twist it in your fingers a little bit. You maybe rock a little bit back and forth if you're in an area that has a heavy amount of hair. And so let's look over here and see if we resolve the issue. We did. So now all of our impedances are at or below 10. Let's see. This is an acceptable, these are acceptable levels of impedances for training. Let's look at some that might be a little bit higher. Let's look at C3. Let's try to give it a little bit of, let's try and move it around. So you just lightly rock it back and forth. It's at 6.1. Let's see if we can get it to under 5. So let's come back to C3. And now we're going to use our Q-tip. And you just want to put it right there and just kind of twist it back and forth. Maybe rock it back and forth inside to move the hair around. Now we're at 6.4. We're still at an acceptable level of impedance, but for training purposes, we're gonna work to get that under 5. So we rocked it back and forth with our fingers. We used the Q-tip. Now we're gonna insert just a little bit of gel. There is such a thing as using too much gel, so you wanna be careful not to put too much in. So we wanna lift up the electrode, just squeeze a little bit of gel in there. And then once we do that, we're going to put 6.1. We're going to go ahead and move around a little bit the electrode again, just giving it a rock back and forth like we did before. And there we are. We're at 4.7, 4.8. That's very good. Now there are a couple of things that we want to look at. These impedances look very good. There is one, I'm going to grab what we call a quick insert cord. So this is what's called a quick insert cord. And I affectionately call this a jumper cable. What you're doing is if you have a site on this, when you're looking at your sites, if you have an area that you are not able to get under a certain number, and you've tried everything, you've rocked it back and forth, you have used your Q-tip, you've added more gel, what we're gonna do is we're gonna put this in an area that's a little bit high. Let's try T5. So right now we're at 7.6. What we do is we take this end and we're gonna plug it right into the corresponding site on the amplifier. You're gonna plug it into T5. We're gonna come over here. We're gonna insert the metal tip right into the hole and push it all the way in. Right, just like that. Now, let's see how well that worked out. So we're at 7.1. Then what you want to do, we'll take this insert out. Let's give it a little wiggle. Put the insert back in. Now we're going down to 5.4, 5.5. What we'll do is we'll insert just a little bit of gel. Take your insert back out. We're going to add just a little tiny bit of gel in here. And then we're going to put that insert back in. And then you just keep working on it. I'm going to take the insert back out. I'm going to take my Q-tip and what I'm going to do when I have the Q-tip inside, I'm just going to kind of try to move the hair. You can feel the hair in. You want to just try and move it out of the way as much as possible. Put your insert back in. We're almost there. 0.1. Now this is a good example. So what we're gonna do, if you have your quick insert in, you've used gel, you've used the Q-tip, you want to kind of go up underneath the cap, and you want to feel, there's a bit of hair there. There's a big, kind of a clump of hair. And that happens sometimes when you put the cap on, especially with people with long hair, kind of pushes the hair together, especially on the bottom part of the cap. So, there we go. This is a great example of trying to get your connections and your impedances under control. This is a fine impedance. There we go, 4.0. Sometimes it's, you want to get things done so you can get your client training, but patience is a virtue. And now we're at 4.2. So that is a good example of tenacity and working to get those impedances down. Now the hair is one of the things that I wanted to make mention of, especially in the temporal lobes, especially at T3 and T4. So don't be afraid to move your fingers underneath the cap, and you can feel like right here at T3, it's a clump of hair. So sometimes if you just kind of grab that hair and move it to the side, it's almost like pushing bangs to the side. And then you can go ahead and get that gel down and further manipulate that electrode a little closer to the scalp. That is also a way of helping to get your impedances at least on the peripheral edge of the cap. And I was able to get it down to 4.9. And there's one more mention about impedances, and there's a lot more to say about it than the quick mention that I'm going to give, but it is important when you are getting someone ready with a cap and you're trying to get your impedances right and you're shaking the electrodes like this. You want to be very careful not to do it in big wide areas. You want to try to keep the electrode within its own area. So sometimes a circle is good when you just kind of circle it around in its own area. You can rock it up and down, back and forth. You want to avoid going too far to up and down or side and side, because you could cause what we call an electro bridge. And that is where the electrogel from each site will meet. And then they're not producing, but it looks like on the computer, the exact same EEG. So you want to be careful when you're moving your electrodes around, especially up here in the front, because you have these two areas that are very close together. You have your ground and you have FZ. So it is very important when you're working with these, if you're moving things back and forth, you want to just try to keep it in its own area and not shake it too far to the up, back and front, or left and right. And that concludes our impedance video.